Welcome to the Mick and Pat Show. We're just getting started this evening. We're settling into the world headquarters, and
when did we start calling it that?
I don't know. It just started coming out. I like to call it all sorts of things in my mind. The Bat Cave
is like the Bat Cave.
The Mick and Pat worldwide headquarters, and we're glad you're with us tonight. I heard something this week that kind of I didn't know about, and I was like, oh man, I need to tell the people about this because
this is your factoid.
It's a little factoid, a little history lesson, and relates to stuff we talk about all the time. But so when you purchase, a silencer, also known more correctly as a suppressor, you got to pay your $200 tax stamp.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know when and why that came into effect? Like roughly.
Well, I know it came into effect quite a minute ago. It was when $200 was like a big chunk of change.
For sure. Because it was in the mid 1930s, just post prohibition. $200 for this tax stamp, and the tax stamp was mostly
wasn't even for suppressors then.
No, it actually
were there suppressors, were there?
There were suppressors then, actually. Wow. So that's the surprising. Suppressors got thrown on there, but what happened was, so far as people can tell, is one, the main things that were on there was machine guns, short-barreled shotguns and rifles, and suppressors. But pistols were on there.
Oh, really?
And they got pulled. And I think after, what people think is that after all the craziness with prohibition, they were like, don't do the pistols. Like, we cannot have this, this is going to send the people into too much, And so they took pistols off and then put suppressors in. And they were rudimentary at the time, super rudimentary at the time, but they did exist. And at the time, how much a machine gun cost in 1930?
I swear I saw something in a catalog of like a Thompson, 1930, not Thompson machine gun, but I swear I saw a catalog image of like 1950s, and a Thompson machine gun was like $50.
Yeah, so like machine guns were $200 about.
Really?
Kind of okay. But at the same time too, like you could also, back in the day you could get other guns for $50, $20, like that sort of stuff.
You could go to Home Depot and buy yourself a Thompson.
Right.
Not really Home Depot, but like your local hardware store.
For sure. So this tax stamp was the equivalent of a machine gun, which machine guns have gone off the rails the last few years. But modern day equivalent for that tax stamp is $4,500.
Oof.
So at the time when they instated this, that put a lot of things out of reach for people, but also anyways, I didn't know that was I didn't know that's when it came around. I didn't know that machine guns cost $200, and it was just like 100% tax, more or less, on your stuff. And so it's held true since then, but people have been trying to get some new laws passed for basically hearing protection, things like that, to get the suppressor off of the list. And I think it could happen someday.
I think it could happen soon. I think like we are closer now than we've ever been before, especially with like the recent disabling of like, there's that ruling very recently about machine guns not being NFA objects. And so like there's a possibility that machine guns come back on the menu.
That's true for sure. And I think that the fact in the suppressor piece, the fact that like, in Europe, they're easy to get.
It's so easy.
They're so easy to get. Guns are really, 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 really hard to get. Suppressors are easy to get, and so we'll see. We'll see if you get to save your $200 someday on your cans. But anyways, I learned that this week. So hey, and I'm really glad they didn't do that with pistols.
Yeah, can you imagine how different our world would be if we didn't have a gun constantly pointed at our wieners? My life would be different.
Or like grandpa couldn't have afforded that cool 38 special that he got for $50.
Speaking of which, I just kind of inherited some very nice firearms. and I think I sent you the image or the video. I sent you a link to one of them that went on for auction.
Oh yeah, yep.
Is a Steyr Mannlicher or Mannlicher, but it was originally made by what Steyr, the Steyr company, which the Steyr company made like, you know, die cast aluminum toys. They made, you know, all these kind of different household appliances and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They really prided themselves on the rifles they made. A lot of their rifles, you know, their Steyr rifles were like what a lot of people, you know, were outfitted with going to war. Mm-hmm. And then they got into like more of the boutique hunting post World War II. And so this is a Steyr Mannlicher with its OG Leupold scope.
Oh, wow.
And it's that like simple 1950s, just skinny crosshair scope. Mm-hmm. No mills or anything on it. Mm-hmm. It's in 30-06, which is also super rare because most of them were made in like really obscure calibers. Not obscure now, but at the time weren't obscure. You know, they're common European calibers. And it's got a flush wood stock up to the front sight. And it's like one of those hunting rifles that has a front sight, you know, like built into it and like iron sights. And the scope can like quick detach off of it. You know, the scope's not like a screw down mounted super hardware thing. It's designed to be like taken off quickly to use the iron sights. So I'm really stoked about it. I got a really great deal on it. Especially when I'm seeing them in the condition it's in with the original scope. I'm seeing them go for like $3,000. And so I'm like, damn, bro, I got a steal on this. And it's kind of like, you know, a family friend who's passing it down to us because, you know, they don't have anyone in their family who would really use it or appreciate it. So I'm pretty stoked about that.
Yeah, this thing's slick looking.
Yeah, isn't it slick?
It's cool.
Doesn't it look like I'm about to like get in a bell tower and start just like taking out an army?
And it also, what I like about this long, how the stock comes all the way up to the front is the, you remember Last of the Mohicans? You know the weapon that dad had? He had this long club with the knife point on the end of it.
Yeah.
Something about this looks like that. So it just
cudgely.
Just looks cool.
Yeah.
I like it.
Well, that's supposed to also make the barrel much more stable. You know, like most hunting rifles, their barrel is set into the stock, right? But the stock doesn't go all the way down, right? So this like idea, this concept of like a barrel set all the way to the tip in wood is supposed to keep it from having more drift if you're firing, you know, follow-up shots, which, you know, I think it can definitely be used as a hunting rifle, but it seems to me like it's also like more of like a marksmanship rifle as well. But
how heavy is it?
I think somewhere I read it's like 6 or 7, maybe.
Really?
Yeah,
Really?
it's pretty lightweight.
That's pretty light then. I mean,
no, it's pretty lightweight. And I think it's coming with the original strap. So, and like I bought that one, and they're just like, yeah, he has this like really nice vintage hunting knife that's well cared for, and we're gonna throw in his Ruger 270 with it, and it's also got a scope. I'm like, yeah, throw it all in, baby. They're like, they were calling me and they're like, we don't want to send you junk though. Like, we have a bunch of 20 gauge, 12 gauge, and 16 gauge shotgun. Like, you have any use for that? And I was like, I will find a way to make use of that. You know what I mean? I'm sure
if I have to.
I'm sure I can really lighten up a buddy's day by giving them the coveted 16 gauge rounds. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
So, but anyways, that's kind of my gun news. We went shooting, and I did use the Flux for a ton of drills, and I had really good bag time and accuracy running it. I like did the hit factor scoring for how we were like scoring like our shot placements in like time. And I had like with the Flux, my first run was like a 1.9 hit factor, which isn't great. That's kind of like you take your points and how many are in the A zone, in the C zone or D zone, or how many are misses.
Right.
And then you add those up and then divide it by your time, right? That's how you get hit factor. So like a 1 hit factor means like you got 40 points in 40 seconds, right? That'd be a 1. That's not good. That's pretty poor. It's good for some people, I guess, right? But for like people like you and I who should be much more experienced and practiced, right? So the first one I got like a 1.9, then I got it up to like a 2.2. And I think I finished the day with my best score being like a 2.3, which was pretty good. I was pretty proud of. It was like, 40 points in under 16 seconds. So it was pretty great. But our homie out there, old man John Wick, he's so fast, dude. Yeah. He's so fast. He also, he shoots every weekend at USPCA.
Yeah, he's been working a lot.
So, but he, dude, it's honestly crazy. I like got ahead of him and I was like teasing him and kind of giving him a hard time and ribbing him. And I was like, come on, old man, let's see what you got. And then, bro, he pulled out his actual competition pistol, like that he's actually running at events. Not his
carry.
Yeah, it's like a full framed weighted like speed canic.
Yeah.
And like the trigger roll on it is like a very short, maybe 2 millimeter trigger break. And it's like maybe 2 pounds, 3 pounds. And bro, he just like I think he got 40 points in 13 seconds, which and he was like, yeah, that's not great. I'm like, okay, skunked me, bro. But anyways, so good shoot weekend, good shoot stuff. You'll be shooting this weekend. It's been a good week for guns.
Oh yeah.
But it's been not a great week for some people. We got some news here.
Yeah.
And I guess I was pretty actually aligned. I guess let's talk about the hurricane first, because I was in Virginia last week I got to go to a memorial service at Arlington, which was awesome. If you ever get the chance and you're invited to go with a family for that is one of the coolest things, seeing them do the full service. And I got to be part of I got to drive a car in the actual, caravan through Arlington, which is very, you can't just drive into Arlington.
No.
And so that was pretty sick. I got to be a part of that caravan and drive to the burial site and see where they were going to, where the plot was already dug in his headstone. And then it was my wife's grandfather, her step grandfather, I guess. But and then he was a Marine too, so they had the Marines carry him in as pallbearers for the ceremony in the church, and then carried him back out to the hearse, and then we did the caravan, and then carried him out of there to the tent where they did the flag fold and handed it to his wife.
And those Marines are probably just
they were squared away,
oozing the slickness.
Oh yeah, they're squared away. I heard a lot of those guys are combat vets because they're hurt, so they can't, or they're medically not allowed to go back to combat. But they're squared away so much that they get the station of being pallbearers and stuff for Arlington services like this. All of them looked like strong Marines, you know what I mean? They were all pretty squared away. But the 21 gun salute was pretty sick, and it was raining. Felt like I was in a movie, dude.
Yeah,
it was just the perfect super low hanging cloud, overcast rain, and it was just a beautiful service. But all that said, a lot of people were flipping about this hurricane coming up into Florida, and people were just talking left and right, and they're they say it's unsurvivable conditions. And I was I don't know, man. I know quite a few homies down in Florida who are not concerned one bit.
Yeah.
And it seems though, it kind of blew over and then up into other southern states that are not as equipped for hurricanes, right?
Yeah, for sure. Because there, as far as I was seeing videos come out of there was Florida man was just out in the streets,
having fun,
running around, just being Florida wild, man. Being Florida man out there. But yeah, it came up and inland, and the storm itself just ended up in the Appalachian Mountains, and the I think the place that's taking the brunt of it is North Carolina, because basically when you have a ton of rainfall in Florida, it's so flat there. The water level, I'd say this, when it rains a lot, you don't really notice the water level changing as much as now when they get affected by a hurricane, it's from the high winds and the storm itself. But what it appears to have happened in North Carolina is that the basically because of where the storm hit those mountains, it's the flooding from it that just washed out these cities, highways, and people kind of back in those mountain areas where there's kind of only one way in, one way out type stuff. And so they're dealing with a lot of stranded people, landslides, and I think it's 190 people have been confirmed to have passed away. Most people
outside of Katrina,
of Katrina in the past 55 years on that one. So we'll see as things come out around their recovery there, but lots of the pictures coming out, there are lots of infrastructure just completely destroyed, not just damaged, but just gone for those roads and stuff. So lots of support has been coming in there from there's government agencies, National Guard people getting involved, but then also like just tons of volunteers who have been kind of flocking to here to get. The biggest thing right now is the people who are stranded needing water and food and getting their power back up and things like that, because the power outages are they're affecting, it says like millions of people with needing to get those back up. And so one of my guys who works for me, he just flew out there and he's gonna volunteer for the next week and kind of see what's going on. So I think when he comes back, gonna ask him about what it was like there, because the hurricane itself, as far as making landfall, really didn't do much damage, but the and people did pass away in Florida as well, but the brunt of it definitely was up in those North Carolina and South Carolina. And so and these cities are like 500 miles inland, which that's what's crazy too, is to be like 500 miles inland and getting whacked by a storm like that. So we'll see. I'm going to have him report back and see, what it was like there, what was the conditions, what did he see? And, there's been a lot of people talking about government aid not coming in, these sorts of things. And lots of that's, I think, just some kind of politicizing, saber rattling stuff. But we'll have some boots on the ground and see what he has to say about it, because it'll be interesting to know firsthand what people are seeing out there.
And is he like he's out in North Carolina or something, or? Yep.
He's because he went to school out there, and so he's got friends and connections out there, and so he flew out there to go volunteer and help where he can. So we'll see if he gets into some of these sites, because the airport in Nashville was closed for a while, but now it is open to back up. So I think he was able to get in there.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I mean. Yeah, I kind of thought people were blown out of proportion from what I heard. Like the news was blown out of proportion from what I heard from people down in Florida. And then now, what you were just talking about and reading off from like how brutal the flooding is, and looking at some of these images, like it's pretty intense. I don't feel like a lot of these communities are used to that, that kind of torrential weather. Just because of how far inland it is. Like I remember I've been to the Smokies, man, and I don't imagine most of those communities get that kind of rain. Well, they get it over the course of a year, not all at once, you know what I mean?
Right, for sure. So yeah, we'll see what he says. And yeah, it looks like there's a lot of mud to be moved. It is.
I feel like we're used to seeing that kind of stuff more on the West Coast, California.
Like the landslide, mudslide type stuff. Yeah. Yeah, I think part of it was these people inland just got caught. They're not in an evacuation zone, not having to worry about this thing. And then, so they got caught not ready for this sort of thing. Their infrastructure is not suited to handle these sorts of things. But man, it's sad. It's obviously sad the loss of life, and and there's still lots of people missing. As far as recovery goes for this, or rebuilding, man, these rivers and highways are just blown out, and the rivers and stuff that are so pretty, and even like the Big Thompson here that flooded a few years back, like it just looks horrible. like
You still think it looks bad?
I think it still looks bad when you drive up there. They've
I
done
think
a lot.
They've done a ton to repair the sediment.
They have, but it's just not what it was. So like
I don't remember what it was beforehand.
These beautiful little rivers in the Smokies are going to be interesting to see what they look like in a few years as well.
Yeah. That flooding does do some crazy stuff. I remember seeing the photos come out of after the water kind of got controlled and just the sediment being up to like the top of people's roofs, like whole houses buried. Like that was unreal to me.
Here,
yeah,
like in a relatively small flood.
Yeah,
I mean it was in comparison to like a hurricane raining on you. For sure, yeah. It's crazy how much, stuff starts getting moved around when that happens.
Smoke break.
Smoke break.
Hey, Ken, it's Mick, and I've got something important to talk about. We all hope we never find ourselves in a self-defense situation, but life's unpredictable. Enter the National Self-Protection Plan from Attorneys on Retainer, an actual credible law firm you could put on retainer for your self-defense needs. For just $35 a month, you get national coverage in all 50 states for criminal and civil legal representation in self-defense situations, complete with a 24/7, 365 toll-free emergency line. That's real legal support when you need it most. What's in the package? Bail bonds, scene cleanup, firearm replacement, even mental health counseling. Plus, zero fees for a laundry list of defense-related costs like expert witnesses. So support the show and get yourself some peace of mind. Click the link in our show notes or visit our sponsors page to sign up for the National Self-Protection Plan from Attorneys on Retainer.
Hey folks, Pat here. If you're like Mick and I, you're a fan of classic tales like Lonesome Dove, Blood Meridian, The Three-Body Problem, and Steinbeck's East of Eden. With Audible, you can dive into these epic stories anytime, anywhere. Sign up for a free month, and your first audiobook is on the house. To start your free trial and support our show, click the link in the show notes or swing by the sponsors page on our website.
Want an awesome website for your podcast? Check out Podpage. We use it for the Mick and Pat show, and it's a game changer. Set it up in minutes, no coding needed. Support the show by using our link to get started. Your podcast deserves a home as great as ours. Podpage, the one-stop solution. I'll tell you what else, who's not having a great day. Diddy.
No kidding.
So we were just, I sent you this video, but it was Asmongold, who, for those who don't know who Asmongold is, it's spelled ASMONGOLD. He's just a streamer. Take it or leave it, whatever, but he's just honestly always streaming. And all he does on his streams is react to videos. So I'm not like a huge fan of the guy, but I really do appreciate that he has pretty much like, I would say like non-political or agenda takes. He's just usually watching stuff that people in his chat tell him to watch. Mm-hmm. And he's like, oh, wow. And he's kind of reacting to it with his chat, but he's never like making he does, I guess, make some longer form videos, but most of the time he's just like commenting briefly, pausing the video, and then resuming it, right? Mm-hmm. And so, but he's so fast. He's faster than the news. He's who I heard that Trump was getting shot at. Like, he was the first person I saw actually reacting to it and had a video on YouTube before any news media did. Mm-hmm. And that was live. You know what I mean? And so, anyways, I saw today he was the first person I saw to react or upload this Texas attorney's address of the case against Diddy, or cases. This attorney is based out of Texas. In his law firm, I guess he can practice. He's an attorney known by the name of, I just have his last name here. Something Busby. You see it anywhere? Tony Busby.
Tony Busby.
But yeah, so he held this press conference, and he started like pretty much just going into all the details that he could disclose, essentially about the cases that his office is taking up. And he is, apparently they received 3,000 reports of people stating that they were victims of Sean Diddy Combs. but that they only took 120 of them.
Because a little background, if people don't know,
Please do.
Old P. Diddy was arrested on September 16th for it was a federal law enforcement wrapped him up, and they were charging him with racketeering, conspiracy, sex trafficking, and basically prostitution, transportation to engage in prostitution. It had been a months-long investigation into him, and so that was kind of what first broke, and he got arrested. A semi unsurprising thing to like have a celebrity or somebody.
I wasn't shocked that he got hit with sex trafficking. You know,
Right.
so many of these celebrities do pimp someone out.
Right, yeah, or even like racketeering, sex. It seems like it comes with the like, you want to be a,
Big shot.
You want to be a gangster. This is the, Al Capone, racketeering. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Gangster, right? If
Yeah.
you want to be a gangster, you got girls, you got crimes. So that's kind of the unsurprising piece of this when he was arrested. But now, since he was arrested, this is, all these things starting to not just kind of spill out. They're like landsliding in. And it's like you were saying, over 3,000 people.
Yeah.
And then how many how many people is this law firm like taking on?
Yeah, so they said that they're representing 120 cases so far. They've taken them on, and they will be individual cases. They're not grouping them all under one case because of the different locations and suspects that have been claimed to be taking part in what was going on. So essentially, apparently what really seemed to be happening is that Diddy was doing the Epstein thing. Diddy was sexually trafficking not just minors, but like not just normal people, but also a lot of minors. And there was repeated incidences of people who came forward willing to testify and wanted to be represented by Busby's law firm, saying that like Diddy would promise them a record contract or record deal and promise it to their parents. And so then these kids went with Diddy. Diddy would give them what is known as a horse tranquilizer, which almost all of these people tested positive for in their police reports.
Yeah, and all these separate stories.
They all had the same fucking tranquilizer.
Yeah, these same drugs in there. And the story always went that they were offered a drink and or like really forced or like, really pressured to have the drink and then tested positive for these drugs.
And then and the reason they would get tested is because they wouldn't remember anything. And they go to the police the next day, and the police would do a full biopsy, and the doctors would do a biopsy on them, and they would have like serious pain from, pardon our French here, but rectal and vaginal like penetration. And essentially, some of them were conscious enough and just like drugged enough that they reported, lucidly being conscious while they were just being passed around from person to person to have sex with. And they were in a state of mind where like they were aware of what was happening, but they couldn't consent in any way, shape, or form. Right.
And it's of these 120, it's 60 males, 60 females.
Yep. And I think they said at least 30 of them are still currently minors.
Yeah, or because at the time of the...
Was it at the time?
Yeah.
Okay. And so like all that said, like it is honestly egregious what is going on here. Like, this I totally just blew it off originally when I heard the charges of like, dude, yeah, they got caught buying a prostitute and dodging taxes like so many other people do, or he was actually pimping people out and they caught him pimping them out and being a part of that organization. And I guess I just didn't think it was going to be Epstein level stuff, but the law firm, the reason, again, I want to emphasize is the reason they're doing these cases separately, because usually what you would see is like something along the lines of like Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby had 40 people overall come forward with credible testimony that he sexually assaulted them, drugged them with a drink, and raped them, or sexually assaulted them through pressure and stuff for the industry. Those were all bundled into one case, and he got a charge and sentencing based off of all those different incidents and cases and testimony. And they're not doing that with Diddy because how many other people were here. And the quote is that Sean Diddy Combs is just one of the many powerful people that Busby will be pressing charges and revealing. And apparently they have the list, and the reason they're not disclosing it right now is because, of course, never tell your enemy what you're doing or what you plan to do. Mm-hmm. But he says, we will expose the enablers who enabled this conduct behind closed doors. We will pursue this matter no matter who the evidence implicates. And apparently the list is already insane, and they're very careful because these people are not just celebrities. A lot of them are like massive commercial real estate owners who would essentially, they didn't take part in actually the sex act, but they were paid off and fully aware of what Diddy was selling in these places and the parties he was holding. He would call them quote unquote puppy parties. And it was an opportunity to pass a minor around. And so it's it's unreal to me, but like, you know, the law firm is going for those people too, right? The law firm's like, dude, you're not off the list here. And because of that and how diverse each instance might be from one to the other, and they can't all be grouped under one because of how many people could be indicted and charged, they're doing them one at a time. And it's a big ass law firm though. Like I looked up where, you know, his law firm, Busby Law Firm is the name of the law firm, right? It's not small. So like they certainly have the resources to do this, right? And take this caseload on. He said the day will come when we will name names other than Sean Combs, and there's a lot of names. The alleged youngest victim was 9 years old. He, as Mr. Combs' legal team has emphasized, he cannot address every meritless allegation in what has become a reckless media circus. Erica Wolf, the attorney representing Combs, said. That said, Mr. Combs emphatically and categorically denies all as false and defamatory any claim that he sexually abused anyone, including minors. I mean, you could go for it, man, but like you have 3,000 people claiming it, and you know, that trickle effect of like, all right, someone came forward finally, all right, I'll do it too. Was it
if 5% were true?
Yeah.
Like let's say like just like if you're just doing the thing we're saying, like let's say only 5% of these people coming forward are truthful about it. That's 150 people. Oh yeah. That's a ton of people. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's a, yeah. And the, like the stats on these folks, the fact that lots of people are, here's the deal. For me, myself, for old Pat, you know how many speeding tickets I get a year?
0.
Maybe between 1 and 3.
A year?
Yeah, depending on those like depending
Holy
on those
smokes, brother.
Depending on those like
I've gotten 2.
Well, here's the deal. There's a Jeep that parks out here with a freaking radar right out front of my shop, and they dink us all the time. But also like straight pulled over by a cop. You know, maybe once a year pulled over by a cop for a ticket. You know how often I speed? Every damn day. Every damn day I'm speeding. And so if you just want to lay that over some of these crimes that this other fellow's committing, logic would say he's been doing this a lot for a long time. And it dates back all the way, what was it, to 1991?
Yeah, some of the earliest ones.
So there's
and a lot of these like charges are sex trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping, arson, bribery, obstruction of justice. I think the crazy thing too that everyone's making originally memes about, but like I think is really damning when you think about like the type of parties he's throwing and stuff. He throws like what is known as these freak offs, which are like quote unquote like drug fueled sex gatherings. He was arrested with over 1,000 bottles of lube in like a room that had his firearms were locked up in, right? And it's just kind of like this weird sex dungeon esque place. It was like really strange. And so like I know a lot of people are joking about the lube, but I'm like, bro, you know why you need 1,000 bottles of lube? It's because you have an insane shitload of clientele who are looking to have a long night of sex.
Or less consenting or unconsenting. Right? You know what I mean? Like, there's like, hey, sometimes you need this stuff.
Sometimes you do if you're in the shower.
But I'll tell you when you for sure need it.
When someone's not consenting.
Yeah, so
exactly.
It's like that's gross. And the fact that when was that happened?
That was when they arrested him.
No, that was when they arrested him. Yeah. Okay. But because there's been, because what I was about to get at was people have known about these parties for a long time.
We know about the quote unquote orgy parties that we hear about. They've existed since Rome, right?
Yeah.
But like, there's a difference between like a bunch of consenting adults deciding to get freaky and then like the straight up solicitation of, hey, come and pay the fee to get in this backroom party and we can let you have sex with whoever you want. Right.
And the fact that at these parties, when people have been talking about these parties even before, saying basically you had to drink whatever they were giving you.
It was like, that was something they stated. Like it was like a mandated, like, hey, you want to hang out with us, you have to drink this.
Yeah, drink the party or leave. Or drink the drink or leave. And so and they have all these different drugs in there that was all sorts of stuff in there, especially just bad stuff. And I think that what's crazy about this one is how that lawyer was saying that he came out and said we have this list of names and we're going to say the names.
Oh yeah.
And then he also said, and you will be he either said shocked or surprised or something, but like you will be stunned or something, kind of like at like the names that are coming out on this thing.
Yeah, bro, I'm sure we will be, man. I'm sure it's, bro, I wouldn't be shocked if there's like some names that are straight out of left field, like, yo, Ellen DeGeneres. You know what I mean? Like just like something weird like that, right? Where people are like, what the fuck? Like what? Right. I wouldn't have expected that person to be at the Diddy freak off sex dungeon night. You know what I mean?
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy because you do hear about all these like people who come out talking about like, especially like the Nickelodeon and Disney Channel stars. They talk about how awful the industry is and like what they had to do to like get in and get started and how they hate being famous now. And a lot of them go off the, deep end, of course, right after as they like, they are out of custody of their parents or agents. And so one thing though I do want to like nip in the bud is like there's this AI track song going around. Apparently I was looking into it because even Billie Jean had heard about it. There's this AI track going around and it's someone who says it's a song by Bieber. Bieber did not make the song. It was generated by AI. It's talking about how, he lost himself at a Diddy party and all he wanted was a new Ferrari, but it cost him his soul, and the fame and the glory wasn't worth it. And like that, it's totally AI generated, guys. It's not a song where Bieber's doing a tell-all coming out about it. Now
we're gonna call this one potential historical fiction.
Yeah, no kidding. The thing that is crazy though is that there is a video that Justin Bieber has on his YouTube page from years ago, where he was talking about how Diddy was helping him essentially get, like, Diddy was like a mentor helping him produce a track, right? And like, I wouldn't be shocked if something came out like massive, not saying that Bieber strikes me as the kid who was groomed, but I wouldn't be surprised if he was like, yeah, you know what? It didn't happen to me, but it happened to someone else I know. And like, it's, and I'm not going to be quiet about it, or if maybe it did happen to him, that would be awful. But, I just wouldn't be surprised because there's now like it's kind of one of those things where like, people ask like, how did we not see the signs? And then you like start looking at all these interviews Diddy did. And like, the reason I said Ellen was like, there's some really sinister, weird energy between him and Ellen that felt like when you watch it hindsight now, feels like Ellen's almost like blackmailing him. He like, it looks so uncomfortable. And I was just going through
Diddy
all these.
Or Justin Bieber?
Diddy.
Okay. Yeah.
And it just looks like, You know what I mean? It just looks like all these interviews he does and things he talks about and people talking about the Diddy parties.
Mm-hmm.
It just seems like, wow, dude, how many of these people talking about this were in on it? You know what I mean? How many of these people were just getting away with this, thinking they'd never get caught? So, I don't know. If you got time, start coming up with your conspiracy theories of who the names are going to be. I mean, I'm looking forward to finding out, because it's like, it's guaranteed that there's going to be a Venn diagram of people at the Diddy parties and people at the Epstein Island, you know?
Yeah. And you know, and people have been like to have an unconfirmed list from the Epstein stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and this, like, it's like people aren't, you know, the people aren't going to maybe stand for not getting the list this time. And to the point in, Asmongold's video was, he was saying, like, these guys aren't powerful in comparison to the Epstein people.
Yeah.
Right.
The Epstein people are rulers of nations.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. So
these people are like our fool in the courtroom in comparison, you know? They're entertainers.
Oh yeah. The video of Diddy with Justin Bieber's gotten like millions of views.
Yeah, isn't it crazy?
In the last
recently?
few days, yeah. Because it's.
Do you pull it up and see it? Doesn't that like make you sick to your stomach though? Now, like, you see how excited Bieber is, and Diddy just looks cold to me, bro.
Yeah,
like he looks like unemotional the whole time.
Yeah,
and I'm like, geez, holy fucking shit! Like, what happened? You know what I mean? It's awful.
Yeah, it is.
Makes you think, like, there's no way that young kid in that video has any idea who he's sitting next to. Even again, like, you know, God forbid anything happened, right? Like, it's awful that anything happened to one person, let alone thousands. But it is that feeling you see when you see like those pictures of serial killers, right? Like, and they're just doing something normal in public with people who have no idea. And you're just like, holy shit, like, this is awful now. It's a whole different light.
Yeah. And it's, I was talking yesterday with a guy about this, actually, on a golf course with a guy that I didn't know I was playing with, just met him, and we were talking about, he just kind of brought it up, like, an older gentleman, you know, like,
how do you say it? He's like, did he say,
I guess I should say older.
And he said, you see that shit about Sean Combs? Or he's like, man, you see that shit about Diddy?
Yeah, I guess I should say, when I say older gentleman, he wasn't rickety yet. You know, he was, you know, he was gray, but he could still swing the club, you know. Sure. But yeah, he was you know, he had some colorful language about the whole thing, and thinking about it, just like, you know, and just like, you know, all this stuff. And he's like, yeah, man, he was bringing up all these names. He's like, and people he thinks it's going to be coming out and stuff, whatever. And it's like but while we were talking, what I was thinking about, I was like, now this stuff's gone on for all of history, abuse of others. Yeah. But in recent years, is it just because of the way that information goes around? Everybody has a cell phone and a camera and evidence and things now, that things kind of, you know, it's a more even playing field for folks to kind of be able to protect themselves? Or like, also, is there other things? Is there greater evil going on that's like, that these things are seeming to become more and more like prevalent and coming out, right? And I don't think there has been a time in human history when like this amount of like sexual exploitation of people and like minors has been like just like coming out.
I mean, I can't say that. I would assume it's always been happening, but the media and the technology of media makes it definitely appear like it's been far more prolific in the last, I don't know, 30 years than it was probably before. And I mean, again, though, you know, that's so hard to say. Like, I mean, you watch True Detective season 1, man. They get it on like vintage videotape in the 80s. So it's like, I'm sure they were doing it before they had videotapes for it, right? You know what I mean? Like, it's been going on since, you know, the Canaanites, right? Sodom and Gomorrah. And so it is one of those things, though, that like, as a believer, I do find myself pulling on my chin hairs and reading more and more about, the prophecies of Isaiah and the book of Daniel and, kind of end time stuff about how the cult of personality and people worshiping themselves and children be sacrificed on the altar. Like, I don't think that means like a physical altar is going to be set up in front of us and we're going to see children sacrificed on it, all the time. I think that very well could be abortion. I think that very well could be like the sacrifice of unborn children for the sake of the self, the ideology of the self, the ego of the self, as well as, the sacrifice of, child innocence for sexual pleasure.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things that I'm like, and here's the thing too, bro, you got to know like how many kids are just dead because they were too much of a pain in the ass or too much of a hassle. And like, I guarantee you will find out like there's murder charges laced in this. You know what I mean? Like there's no way. They talked about it when like people were interviewed for the Epstein case about girls going missing. You know what I mean?
Right.
Just being done away with and still no one has ever heard from again. I guarantee you we're going to find out the same thing with this Diddy case is, there were people done with so that way they wouldn't be a problem down the road. But all that said, it's pretty crazy. It's pretty dark. I guess I also just try to let it be, I just try to be like a duck and try to accept like it's part of living in a fallen world and not to let it kind of get to me too much. But I'll be interested to see kind of how it plays out from here. I'm sure it's going to be decades. You know what I mean? I'm sure we'll be hearing about this for the next 10 years as like it all plays out. But, bro, you know who's also not doing great this week? Well, I mean, Hezbollah, but also, I say this, as Iran has just returned to fire rockets on Israel, which I saw a lot of people like trying to roast, quote unquote, roast Israel, right? They're like, yeah, that Iron Dome's not working so well now. I'm like, that's kind of odd that like you're celebrating like bombs falling on cities. It feels really weird.
Civilian targets, not military action.
Like I can't ever think of a time where I was really excited about bombs landing in the Middle East. I know a lot of people think it's a two-sided coin. Like people rejoice when bombs fall on Palestine. I've never been happy about bombs on Palestine.
Right.
You know what I mean? But also like, so I see people legit celebrating, who aren't radical Muslims celebrating, missile strikes from Iran on Israel. But I thought I did see the dome working great because most of the missiles I saw make contact to the ground seemed like they were in the open areas outside of the city. And I know the dome doesn't shoot if they can account for the trajectory not going towards a high density area, right? So I don't know. I mean, have you heard any numbers coming out of like the attacks and like were they successful?
I mean, from the. And so, because, so since last October 7th, so by the time you're hearing this, it's been 1 year. Since the
Hezbollah attacks,
the Hamas attack into
Hamas. You're right. Yeah, Hamas, not Hezbollah.
Into Israel, and so coming up on a year of that year of warfare, and since those things have been escalating and bringing in other countries, Lebanon, Hezbollah, and then also Iran involvement. And since that time, thousands of rockets have been shot over to Israel, and thousands have been shot down. So like it's doing its job pretty dang good, considering like what there would be. Like the map, if you look at it, pull up a map of I'll grab it on my phone real quick to show you.
No, I've seen it. You got to keep in mind, I work in Intel.
Oh yeah, for sure. But here was one. But I think this was one day. This was one day.
It was yesterday. Yeah. It was like how many rockets got fired into Israel in just one day, and it was all like a key marked on the map.
Yep. Yeah. So I mean, it's just it's insane, and that's from below. This is unpopulated. Above it is all the So I mean, it's if all those rockets hit.
You have scorched earth, there'd be craters everywhere.
Yeah. I mean, it would be insane. And so with all those, it's been one reported person to it. And I should say with the latest attack of 200 missiles shot in from Iran or by Iran is only one reported death, and that was a Palestinian in the West Bank.
Wow.
And so, and in April it had done a 300 missile attack, including missiles and drones, and so.
But those were from Lebanon, right? Those weren't from Iran back in April.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I don't know,
because this is a pretty radical step for Iran to openly fire into Israel. The last time that happened, right. I can't remember. I got to look it. But I remember I was reading, like, last time it happened was a while back.
Yeah, and so it's a pretty big act of war in a lot of ways, by any interpretation. And so, so a surprising amount of lives not lost from the amount of weapons that are flying back and forth there. What I will say is Israel is also sending, attacks over into Hezbollah, into Lebanon. I don't think they have launched, large attack on. They haven't launched a large attack on Iran, but they've been talking about, that Iran will pay for this, these sorts of things. And so, in the Golan Heights area, the northern border of Israel, there has been actual, soldiers on the ground fighting back and forth too. So that's also, that's a pretty big escalation to have, people, boots on the ground back and forth. I believe 11 Israeli soldiers were killed yesterday in fighting there. And so, they've got people engaging in combat.
Did you see that? The reason I said Hezbollah earlier was because I saw that video breaking down the tunnels that Hezbollah was building to do another October 7th attack.
Oh, from the north?
Yeah. Which was part of, like, the whole reason, a huge part of, like, why Hezbollah got targeted so hard and so brutally by Israel was because they had this, intel, this OSINT that Hezbollah was planning this attack, this massive offensive again, to sneak in through these tunnels and try to do a whole nother assault on Israel on October 7th again. So they started, they knew this has been being planned months ago, right? And so they used, subterfuge and stuff like to do the pager attacks. And dude, I'm sure you know this just because of how well read in you are with Israel. So please, definitely correct me where I may be wrong on some of this stuff. But like, it started with the attack of not the attack, right? But like the pager bombs went off, right? And the pagers were being used a lot by Hezbollah because they can't be tracked. For a lot of people that don't know, like, pagers are not something like, cell phones and like that it's very hard to triangulate where a pager is on one individual, especially if you have a bunch of people wearing them. It's like you're just tracking radio signals at that point.
And very cheap, easy to get out to a lot of people.
They are cheap, but Israel and whoever they were working with, they were able to get it was something crazy, like 5 grams of explosive into each of these pagers. And it was just hand waved by Hezbollah when they were like buying these pagers. It was just like, oh yeah, it's just like soldering. And like they detonated them simultaneously, and it was reported 1,000 pagers blew up. And it's not. And now I don't know how many. I don't think it killed 1,000 people, but it definitely injured a substantial amount of Hezbollah agents. And then they, in an absolute genius move, Hezbollah falls back to these radios. I can't remember what bandwidth the radios were using, like what network it was on. But they fall back to their radios, and those two had explosives in them bought by a totally like different, supplier that was, infiltrated by Israeli intelligence. And so those radios blow up, dealing another blow. And my buddy, dude, he just sent me this hilarious message. He texted me. He's like, yo, what are your thoughts on the explosive pagers? This is my buddy. And and I guess I don't want to give his name away, but he, I was like, dude, it's absolutely sick. That is like one of the most insane, like successful operations I've ever heard of. Like this is on the level of like how we put explosives in cigars to try to get Fidel Castro.
Yeah.
But this actually worked.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I was like, we should do this with pedophiles. Like pedophiles use pagers a lot still.
Mm.
And because of how hard it is to triangulate, I'm like, how sick would it be if you're just out in America and you just hear reportedly like 20,000 pagers just blew up today and the nuts of 20,000 pedophiles just got blown off. Like that'd be amazing, bro. And he just like was sending me memes and he's like, the SpongeBob meme. Did you watch SpongeBob?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's the meme of like, the bag of Krabby Patty. Oh no, the bag of like pies. Because like, oh, these aren't pies. These are bombs. These were made in a bomb factory, not a pie factory. And it's just like dubbed over with like, you know, oh, these aren't pagers. These are bombs. They were made in a bomb factory. And I asked him, I was like, have you encountered anyone in your day-to-day life who's upset that terrorists had their nuts blown off by pagers? And he was like, no, but I'm assuming the guys that were wearing them are pretty upset.
For sure.
He's like, I like to imagine that there's a few Hezbollah guys left that are just staring at their coffee machine every morning, wondering if they're safe to drink it or not.
And that's a great point. And,
like the paranoia, bro.
And that's a great point because the and yeah, it was a couple thousand. It was like 4,000 between radios,
individuals
and
or devices.
4,000 devices in total, and including even some laptops and cell phones were reported, and some solar power cells. So, and it killed 20 people, then 450 were injured.
Yeah, no kidding.
And then after the secondary attack, leaving nearly 3,000 injured, and some civilians and some children did die from that as well. But
really? It actually killed some kids.
Killed some civilians.
Wow.
And that's a pretty large scale attack too. To 4,000 explosions, right? And so I mean, but I mean, it really did. To your point of looking at the coffee maker, tons of people went outside and broke their phones.
Yeah, like just
smashed their phones, smashing stuff, not knowing what's going to happen. I mean, the physical attack was one thing, but the Psyop attack of this, for Israel to say, here's what we can do to you when we want.
Yeah.
And to lead, and then also for it to be all comms devices where your commo's down all across. You don't know, you can't trust anything to communicate, and so it's definitely playing into the psyche there on how do we talk, how do we operate, what are we going to do, and so pretty incredible attack, and from a strategic standpoint, it's like I guess I wasn't too surprised at the fact it could be done. I just was surprised at the fact that it happened,
Yeah. I mean, I guess like when I heard about it, I'm like surprised the scale of, something that coordinated hasn't happened sooner. Because that just seems like a given of like a great way to infiltrate and take out, insurgent cells. Dude, I didn't read anything about kids dying. That's super awful. I did not know that they had gotten kids.
Well, and I mean, here's the deal. Like,
granted, it's also one of those things like anyone could claim.
Anyone can claim it, but also like all these Hezbollah guys weren't like out in the field. They're like at home.
But I did I saw the videos of them blowing up in public.
Yeah.
And it didn't seem like anyone around them got hurt.
Right. And yeah, but like it's also like dad's at home on the couch with the kids.
Yeah,
like,
I guess
it's a part of what happens with war, and it's sad. But so it is it is indiscriminate in that fact if you don't, but it's, they did know that it was Hezbollah walkie-talkies and pagers. And so I was like, what a crazy, like, Jack Carr thriller novel type of like this is Jack Ryan type of like kick off a movie type thing. Like what in the world?
Did you ever see that movie with Don Cheadle where he plays an agent undercover in a terrorist cell in New York, and he has to coordinate like a single day of like nationwide bombings that Al Qaeda is trying to plan?
I don't think so.
He's supposed to coordinate different I can't remember what the movie was called, but essentially the big plot reveal. And for anyone who hasn't seen this movie, don't listen. Skip ahead if you're like, ooh, Don Cheadle, CIA agent, terrorist movie.
Is this called Traitor?
I think it is. Yeah. Don't listen to this, right? Go watch Traitor because it was a pretty good movie. But he is required to coordinate in this terrorist cell he's a part of, where each terrorist will go on the day, and they're all going to be on a bus, and they're all going to have their explosive vests on them. And what he ended up doing very subtly is coordinating all of them with via flight plans and taxis and stuff. He got them all on the same bus. And you don't realize it until the moment the bus blows up. But he minimized the amount of civilian casualties because, you know, he got them like confined on one bus. And it was something like, you know, like 70 different terrorists that he got coordinated onto one bus with no civilians, right? So it was like down to the bus driver that he had like as extremists. And it was a pretty insane, like you see it and you're like, wow, I did not see that coming. Because it doesn't allude to like his plan. And he's also like, he is truly an Islamist and he's very sympathetic to like the motivations behind this cause, right? Because it's like, you know, the leader of this terrorist cell for the Taliban has like actually got like quite a good reason to be at beef with the US. And so it is that back and forth. You're like, dude, what is he going to do? And it ends up being a pretty insane reveal. But that's kind of what it reminded me of immediately. I was like, someone watched that and someone was like, what if we kind of do that? You know what I mean? Oh yeah. No, it's wild. It's heating up over there. And it was there was a report that came out about what all these different leaders of Hezbollah, what they were saying, you know, with some like, you know, sentences at least, and, you know, an actual intel of like, you know, here's what Hezbollah leaders are saying their responsibility, here's what Israel is saying their responsibility, here's what Iran saying their responsibility, and then it was like U.S. response, and it's like Joe Biden said he'll talk to Netanyahu, and then quote, relatively soon, unquote. Like, gosh, okay. Yeah, no kidding, right? Dude, I was just talking about when we were in DC with the wife, and I was just like, we saw what's it called, Marine One take off from the White House while we were doing our nighttime tour, and I was like, I bet he's going to like Camp David to just chill out, just like have a beer, and I'm just like, and she's like, what do you think he's doing? I'm like, I bet he's just chilling. I bet he's sleeping through these last couple months. You know what I mean? Like we don't hear anything about Biden really anymore in the news press. I'm sure he'll get around to doing stuff. But anyways, the stuff, the psychological warfare coming out, it's just crazy. And I just, again, like I said, I think it's phenomenal. I think it's and I say phenomenal, like not like I want to make little of like how awful war is or anything, but I am genuinely amazed at the coordination that would have to go into something like that and pull it off in that success. And like you said, the success of the Psyop to like people straight up destroying their communication network out of fear. Like that's unreal, dude. I mean, in one day you threw your enemy back to the Stone Age and totally thwarted any sense of cohesion to perform any kind of really organized mass attack like Hamas did. And so, yeah, I mean, it's getting crazy, but you know, unlike generations before us, Pat, we don't fear the war. We mean the war. And I found it pretty funny when I'm just getting like literally, you know, getting reports and reading like live people on the ground in Israel and like different Discord communities I'm a part of reporting like what's going on. And I'm getting like that one side of thing of people like just, you know, offering raw on the ground intelligence that's verifiable, not, you know, rumor has it, right? And then at the same time, someone's sending me like this meme of like, this one is from that Ben Stiller and Robert Downey Jr. movie. What's the jungle one?
Tropic Thunder.
Tropic Thunder, yeah. It is all of them in the Apache, not in the Apache, in the Black Hawk flying. It's like me and the boys on the way to war because Taylor Swift and Beyonce told a bunch of uninformed white chicks to vote for Kamala.
Yep.
It's just like all these other ones, like people's reactions to the start of World War I. Tragedy. It's like newspaper headlines. Tragedy of the Austrian throne. Murder of Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife. People's reaction to the start of World War II. Sunday Dispatch. Special 8 News. War. Official. People's reactions to the start of World War III. Fortnite kids when they get their first kill in Iran and they're doing like the Fortnite jam 2-step dance.
Yeah.
You know, me and the boys making World War III memes knowing we may end up in a history book at some point, and it's like all of the Spider-Man villains snickering around drawing. And I'm just like, yeah, it is crazy. It do be like that. Like we are literally, most of us are coping by making jokes about how we might have to go to war. And I think that's, I don't know, man. I kind of really appreciate that sense of humor, that I feel like I'm not alone in that dark sense of humor.
Yeah, I think there's like like the two sides to it. To be like, in one sense, like the gotta laugh to not cry about it, you know, type of thing. And there's also like this like complete disconnection from the reality of it in some aspects too. And like you were saying, there's people in Israel putting out like their own memes, right? Or memes, whatever. So yeah, and it's wild, the kind of the mentality and the approach. I don't know, you know, the sad thing, it's like then there's like the sad truth behind some of the memes. That's part of it too, where it's just like, that's why does it connect with people, where it is like, yeah, I do feel like there's a, you know, whatever, like World War III because Taylor Swift told people to, you know, vote for somebody. It's like, and that is also the world we live in, which is just kind of fickle and phony, and just like where that is how people make their decisions. People will make their decisions based off of what they think is popular opinion, or what they think is best for just them individually, or make a decision of like who to vote for just based off of because someone told them to. And then also leaders making decisions based off of just seeming like because of what will give them more power or keep them in power, you know. And that's not a new thing on that front, you know. But I think most young people get their news from memes.
Oh yeah.
You know,
I think I believe that 100%. I mean, I think I get most of my news, like I said, from streamers or like short highlight posts. You know what I mean? Like I don't have Instagram really anymore. Like I'm on Instagram right now, just signed in onto the computer and seeing everything I haven't seen in the last like 6 months. But like on YouTube, I get like, you know, community posts from someone I follow about like latest news or events going on, and I'm like, dope, didn't know that was happening. And usually I see that before like any of the news like channels I follow get something out, like, or before I see like something like from CNN talking about it. You know what I mean? For
sure. And the world communication moves so fast, it's shrunk the world so much that there's too much dang stuff to keep track of, too much stuff to stay up on. Like, you know, even the stuff we've covered tonight from these, like, you know, hurricanes in like most of America would not have even known about what happened in North Carolina. You know, I think like speed of communication, like, you know, in the 60s and 70s we had, you know, and in 40s we had radio and then news television. But even like prior to that, it'd be like, I don't know, you're going to find out in a little while in a newspaper, right? Or whatever, you're going to find out after some time. And so like there's so many things happening all the time to keep up on. There's not necessarily time in the day to read every article that comes out about everything that happened in the world that day, and that we feel like we kind of have to stay up on, which is like it's kind of crazy too, in a sense that not saying we shouldn't be concerned for other people, but like just in a general sense, being like in America, it's weird to be completely concerned with like a war going on literally on the opposite side of the globe.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that I'm not concerned about it or that we shouldn't be, but it's a new phenomenon in a lot of ways, and probably a part of like what's driving a lot of like just like this existential doom mentality that so many people have, because you can't go a day without hearing like whatever is going on.
I mean, you either have to clutch things and white knuckle and just grab as much as you can because so much is going to fly by you and you have to try to constantly stay on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
And like what you grab, hold on to it tight and grab the next thing and kind of it's like I think about it. You either walk down the aisle of the grocery store. This is a weird analogy, but it's what I'm going for. Hear me out. That game show where you had to you were limited time and you had to get so many items to add up to a certain price from a certain aisle or something like that. It was way back in the day. 90s kids remember it, I feel like. So you're either with the latest news and social media and all that, you're frantically grabbing things and trying to throw them in the basket to keep track of as much as you can and know what you should worry about. Or you're looking around at it and you're engaging with things that interest you and you're accepting there's nothing that I have that I can do to control any of this, and it's okay. And I'm still going to wake up and take a breath of fresh air and do my thing to look out for the ones I love. And okay, what if it does become a bigger problem? Well, then the next day, regardless of what I'm doing, if I'm alive, I'm waking up, taking a breath of air, and then doing the things I need to do for the people I love. And that's honestly as simple it is. And I don't know, maybe I'm being naive, but I've always boiled my problems down to that. And I've never really worried and stressed about something other than I've worried about a test in the moment when I'm studying for it. And I know it's in 2 hours and I'm dude, I don't know if I'm going to pass this final. I've stressed about things like that. I've stressed about conversations I was going to have with people, but dude, I don't worry about World War III. I think about it and I think where's the wisdom in preparing for something like this, right? So I'm not going to prevent World War III, but I can tell you what, I can have some, methods of cleaning and storing water.
Right.
And I'm not saying it's going to be enough to keep us sustained for the rest of our lives, right? But it's going to be enough that in any emergency situation, a hurricane, I can have clean water to drink and clean my wounds and, medical supplies, right? And so that's just I think the mentality of I don't even think that's a prepper mentality. I think that's honestly my hope is not in this mentality.
Right.
And that's kind of that's what I've always told people. I'm dude, at the end of the day, okay, if I'm dead, I'm in heaven with Jesus. To die is gain. And, to live is, I'm not going to say to live is Christ because I'm not being persecuted actively like Paul was. You know what I mean? But to live is to live. And just kind of do life again for another day. And so I don't know what are your opinions on it, man? Because you also don't strike me as a guy who puts a lot of stock in worrying about the world.
Yeah.
Even though I know you and I love to have these kind of conversations, especially off mic,
right? About
just how insane things could get, right? And hypothesize. But I don't think you or I go home and stay up at night worrying about it.
No. I don't know if something's wrong with me or right with me in that sense either. It's just I've said this before on the podcast, but it's my sometimes I think my spiritual gift is apathy.
Yeah.
And it's just inside it's like I said, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but yeah, it's just so many people carry around anxiety, and anxiety is basically fear of usually what's to come, right? Yep. Anxiety is fear of the future in a lot of ways. And so
fear of not having control over circumstances.
Yep. Fear of not having control and fear of the future. And it's a really, it's something I haven't struggled with much. There's been times in my life when I've been anxious about certain things or for certain seasons in life, but I just have a peace about things that we're going to work out. And And I feel like, part of it is I'm also either overconfident or I am in some ways competent. Like I'm like, feel like I'll make it through something, or we'll figure it out on the other side.
Mhm.
Whatever it is, it's like, something financial burden or whatever. Hey, we'll get through this, see on the other side, or, sickness is one that does, like, especially like sick kids, things like that is something that is like, that does bring up a lot of angst for me. But I've also like, that's a time in my life when I have to actively practice like the peace in my life and grab hold to the promises of peace, and that's like when angst does come in me. But the also I think too, just being taught over and over and over again growing up, like, cast your cares on him for he cares for you. And then the other one is like, just do the lilies fret, do the birds worry. It's like, today has enough anxiety in itself.
Will I not take care of you if I take care of them?
And so today has enough worries of its own, And so, it's you got to go day to day, and tomorrow's not promised. And so it's kind of it's the way I've learned. It's a little bit the way I naturally operate, but also it's the way I've learned to operate too, So it's like, you have to do both. You got to take whatever natural ability you do have and then also grow it and strengthen it,
Yeah, and I think too, like, I'm sure there's plenty of people who could hear this and be like, well, that's easy for you guys to say, not being in Palestine or Israel. Right. That's easy for you guys to say, not being in North Carolina. Mm-hmm. My response to that, though, is like, I do think my exposure to those people, for me, a lot of it was like with incredibly poor people in Mexico, like Ensenada, dangerous places in Ensenada, where I got to talk to these people who live down there, saw gang violence every day. So, I mean, not gang, saw cartel violence and state government violence every day, right? And I got to listen to them and be like, like, how do you live here? Why are you building anything here? Why are you working? Like, this is like any day now you could catch a round through, your concrete wall and be done. And, of course I wasn't asking those kind of questions, but I was listening to people ask those questions because I was a young man. I mean, a young boy, honestly. I was middle school and high school. And all of them always had the same response of like, look, like what it gains me nothing to worry about this. This is where I am. This is my current circumstance. This is where I live. I trust in God and my hope is in God. And I do what I can to take care of my loved ones and my family around me. But, I don't have the means to pick up and leave. And if I picked up and left, my day-to-day problems would still be where I go. And, it did always blow my mind that, like, that was just their approach to everything. And I'm sure you've encountered the same thing when you talk to people in Israel, Palestine, right? Like, their perspective is like, not like, yeah, you know what? Screw God for birthing me here. You know what I mean? It's just, they're like, oh, it's life.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, it can be very frightful at times. Yeah. And there are days where I'm worried, but like, at the end of it, what am I going to do? Just live under a table?
Right. Yeah. And that's not to say that they don't carry worry or trauma from their experiences. Sure. And like an underlying like angst too. And because there is that too in some of these places, and all of a sudden it flares up. But then, for by and large, the resiliency of human.
They still go get dinner.
Yeah.
They still go get milk. They still fill up their car with gas.
Yeah.
They still go to the local hardware store to buy nails and wood.
Right. Definitely. And by and large, that's mankind's how they operate. It's how we operate. It's why we're around, right? It's just like the across the globe, people going through all sorts of lavish lives and also living in completely, impoverished and or difficult circumstances. And you'll see a lot of smiling faces in lots of those hard places. So
I think I truly do think, like, a common thing when I talk to like Americans who have such a deep fear, like fear where they don't even want to think about what's going on in the Middle East. They don't want to even talk and work out the concept of like voting in the next election, who the president is going to be, what's going to happen in Ukraine. You know, like they're so terrified of even entertaining those ideas and the anxiety it will give them. And I think across a lot of those people, one thing that I've noticed that's in common with a bunch of them is that they haven't gone to those places. They've never been there even to like for like a visit or like a I'm not saying that I'm not, and this is no way like they're less than because they didn't go volunteer or give their time, but they just haven't been exposed to see that people still flourish and live there. You know, like people still have families and full lives and are a part of communities. And it's like, yeah, you know what? This is tough some days. Also, boil it down. It's a lot of the same thing, you know, people do everywhere else. And so I think like, I don't know. I personally believe like that is like the most defining kind of factor when you see like people come from like, you know, a privileged society like America. And it seems like the people who can comprehend or might have apathy towards how dangerous or dark or foreboding a situation might be. And their mentality is like, well, just got to keep on keeping on. I think a lot of those people just have that mentality because they saw others while they're growing up in those circumstances be able to have that mentality. Yeah. I don't know. Do you think there's anything to that, or do you think I'm talking in my butt?
No, yeah, I think that exposure to a healthy worldview definitely, you know, quenches those fears and gives you understanding and perspective. Because I think perspective is the main thing, and perspective is something I always talk about. Something that I think is super important to have, and the more perspective, there's maybe not a unhealthy amount of perspective to have on something. Now it can put you into a quandary. It can put you into the gray areas. It can put you into the depths. It can put you into the heights. It can put you into
analysis paralysis is what I hear a lot for too much perspective.
Yeah, you can get trapped with analysis paralysis and or moral ambiguity. Yeah, or you know, right, or all sorts of things like that. But by and large, it's like to have perspective is gonna give you I'll say it gives you options of how to see the situation, right? If all you can see of a situation is this one little pointed thing, if your only view into the whole world is through maybe your cell phone screen and your algorithm that's feeding your fear, or something like that, or like whatever it is, like or take it back to a long time ago when all you knew was your little village. You didn't even know it was over the hill. You had no idea what's going on over there. Or same thing, like back away from the cell phone, get some other points of view, go over the hill and see what's going on. Like you can at least be like, I don't like it over there, I'm coming back. Or like, oh, life can be different. Or, oh, there's all these things. It gives you the ability to decide and choose how you have to choose how to respond to it. So perspective can put you into some existential crises as well, but at least allows you to come through on the other side with a more well-rounded understanding. Yeah, because like even like I've got friends who have said, hey man, like come to Israel with me, let's travel over there. And like during peacetime here, there's like I'm not going to do that, man. Like I can't. It's not like it's not safe. I'm not going to do that. It's just like what, you know, like
yeah,
or whatever. Kind of like.
Well, don't get me wrong, I hear what you're saying. And like there's wisdom in being like, you know, some people some people just go walking into, you know, Iran or Iraq, right? Thinking like, I can just be a tourist from America here. Like
two college girls want to go backpack, and so they're going to go out and just go in the Middle East right now.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah.
It just doesn't work out well.
There's like, I think there's foolishness, and then there's like there's doing something careless and reckless and foolish. You know, like there's like that, I mean, you know, that classic example of like, you're at a resort in Mexico and they're like, yeah, don't leave the resort. And like, you're leaving the resort and they're like, hey, don't leave the resort. And you're like, well, what are you going to do? Arrest me? And they're like, no, but you will die. Yeah. And then we were like, whatever. And then they leave the resort and then they die. You know what I mean? So there's like the difference, like, but like, it's kind of like, I feel like the same thing, you know, no matter where you go, is like, as long as you're practicing some wisdom and going to places where it is wise to be, most of the time the locals there are going to be looking out for you because they don't really want you to die. And like, then there's also the points of time where, like, I would say, like, right now it's probably not really wise to go to Israel. It wasn't wise to probably travel to Israel last night.
Right.
But peacetime, why not go?
Right.
In fact, like, I don't know. I mean, I know a lot of people online who have gone to Israel to be on the ground reporting.
Right.
Or Palestine, right? And none of them have died. Like,
right.
because they're practicing a little bit of wisdom and, you know, being in secure, safe areas. So,
right. Because the flip side is if you have the perspective of, you know, if not being laissez-faire, but you're like, yeah, I'm going to go do this. Also, I could be, like in the backpacker girl situation, I could be, you know, taken, captured, abused, or whatever. There are people. There's bad people in the world too. Like that's a part of perspective, right? That's something to like. We dive into evil topics here, and we talk about evil things that have happened. And a part of that is it's not only a part of evil things. We want to have perspective and understanding around what is going on and why and who and all these things, and so it gives you a well-roundedness. And yeah, so going back to like the anxiety pieces, I think that you have to accept what you can't control, and the things you can control, take control of them. And that's, you know, and control what you can, and accept the stuff you can't, and let it play out the way it's going to play out. And also, it's like hard to like. Also, it's funny to like, don't take your existence so seriously. I don't know, too. There's like kind of like it's hard too from like a perspective of being like,
I mean, Pat, some people, all they have though in their life, in their faith, is their existence. You know, so many people don't believe in existence outside of the here and now.
Oh yeah, definitely. And so it's
kind of pearl clutching. You know what I mean?
For sure. And it's, I'm not saying to not value your life and actually living, but like then also like I'd say I feel empowered and more powerful and greater and more influential by knowing that on this timeline I'm a fart in the wind.
Yeah, I could get smoked at any moment.
I have no earthly political standing. I have, or whatever. Like I've got on this geological time clock. Man, I'm short.
Yeah,
and I, you know, by acknowledging what and getting real about what I am, it actually empowers me to like be bigger. I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, I think it does. I think it not only empowers, but it frees you.
Right.
You know, frees you to be a little bit more carefree. Kind of like, you know what I mean? I think it's kind of like our good old East of Eden, you know, finding purpose in that, you know, work to make a living, you know what I mean? And then being able to live that life, you know, versus the aimlessness and the fear and the paralysis that comes with not having a living. So, I don't know. A lot of philosophy. Yeah, a lot of philosophy at the end of this. But, Pat, anything else you want to sign off with?
You know, when you were talking about this, you know, with the hurricane and or like, you know, fear about the zombie apocalypse or fear about a wildfire coming through and stuff. I was thinking, I was like, it's time to do another series. We got to get some people in here. It's been a while since we had some guests, and like, is it time to get the preparedness series going? You know, get some, and I'll say this on here and then we won't do it for like a year, but the, you know, it's like, in light of talking about people there are people struggling with anxiety, wondering about their capability, wondering about the future, and a part of finding peace in yourself is also capability and perspective. And so the, you know, to bring in, we wanted for a while to bring in people on here to just talk about what does it mean to be prepared. And that's from some super, we'll do some super practical standpoints. Like you're saying, how do you have clean water for whatever may come your way? How do you have medicine for what will come your way? And then I was thinking too, like, and then we could get into even like the prepare your soul, you know, are you prepared? Are you prepared for it all? You know, so it's just to do a little series and get some people in here, some people with some expertise. It's fun and talk and tell stories and things. I think that might be Might be time. And,
yeah, and I know I got people who want to talk about, especially radio. My father-in-law, big radio guy, Billy Jean's dad, and man, is he just an insane wealth of knowledge. So
on like operating radios.
He has a license
not like
for
old radio shows.
No, he has a license for every bandwidth. He's who I consult when I'm talking about like us putting a actual tower up.
Oh yeah.
And yeah. Anywho's up. Ken, thanks for joining us. We hope you enjoyed this kind of review of everything. I hope you're looking at funny memes. I hope that in the darkness of all this, you're finding ways to laugh. Like seeing videos of Florida man out in those hurricane winds, just having a good time. Seeing the memes about, the bombs in the Middle East. And yes, it may be morbid, but, comedy is something that helps us all cope mentally. And I think last but not least, but of course, the comedy and the memes that comes out of the darkness of Diddy and what's going on there. I did see someone make a video about how they're rich because they struck oil. And someone said, well, it'll cost us so much money to really refine oil. And he's like, no, not that kind of oil. Baby oil.
Yeah.
And how Diddy rolled up and bought their land. That's funny.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Beverly Hillbillies 2.0.
Exactly.
The Hampton Hillbillies.
I hope, Ken, that you find comedy in this week. Don't take it too seriously. Don't live in fear. Get up, look after the people you love, go to bed, do it again. But with that, till next time.
Thanks for tuning in. If you love this episode, drop us a review. If you have qualms or comments, leave us a voicemail on our website. While you're there, check out our latest news, merch, and deals from our sponsors. Till next time, Ken.